In the serene town of Clearview, where neighbors exchanged polite smiles and the air seemed always filled with the scent of blooming lilacs, the Monroe family was the picture of perfection. Vanessa Monroe, the eldest daughter, embodied success and grace. With her sharp mind, disciplined demeanor, and a prestigious career as a healthcare administrator, she was both admired and envied by everyone in town. Her marriage to Aaron Hunter, a renowned surgeon, only solidified her position as the town's golden girl. Together, they seemed to have it all: a beautiful home, prestigious careers, and a reputation as the epitome of a power couple. But beneath the polished veneer, cracks began to form. Vanessa's younger sister, Emma, was her polar opposite. Where Vanessa was poised and disciplined, Emma was restless and impulsive. Her life had been a chaotic whirlwind of failed relationships, unstable jobs, and bad decisions. Emma was the kind of woman who could light up a room with her charm but leave a trail of destruction in her wake. She had always lived in Vanessa's shadow, a fact that both angered and saddened her. But after her latest breakup left her emotionally and financially drained, Emma had nowhere else to turn. She packed her bags and returned to Clearview, seeking refuge with the only family she had left. Vanessa, ever the dutiful sister, welcomed Emma with open arms despite their strained relationship. She offered Emma a place to stay in the guest house on her property, hoping this would be a fresh start for her troubled sibling. Aaron, though polite, was wary. He had seen firsthand how Emma's presence often came with chaos. Still, he trusted Vanessa's judgment and said nothing. Clearview's idyllic tranquility seemed to envelop Emma at first. She settled into the guest house, its warm, rustic charm a stark contrast to her turbulent life. Vanessa offered her support, connecting her with job opportunities and introducing her to neighbors. Yet, as the days passed, old wounds began to surface. Emma's resentment toward Vanessa simmered beneath her smiles. The life Vanessa had built, her successful career, her beautiful marriage, her flawless reputation, was everything Emma had ever wanted but never attained. And the more she watched Vanessa and Aaron together, the more the envy burned. Aaron, meanwhile, was feeling the weight of his own struggles. The demands of his career left him drained, and his marriage, once filled with passion and laughter, had become routine. Vanessa was as devoted as ever, but their conversations felt stilted, their intimacy a distant memory. Aaron loved her, but he longed for something more, something unpredictable, something that made him feel alive again. Emma noticed. She noticed the subtle distance between Vanessa and Aaron, the way his eyes lingered a second too long when she laughed at his jokes during dinner. She noticed the way his guard slipped ever so slightly when they talked. And she saw an opportunity. Vanessa, always busy managing her career and household, missed these fleeting moments. But Emma didn't. What began as casual conversations between her and Aaron soon grew into something more. Emma leaned into her natural charm, carefully testing boundaries while ensuring her actions seemed innocent. Aaron, caught off guard by her energy and boldness, found himself drawn to her in ways he couldn't explain. The quiet facade of Clearview was beginning to crumble, and none of them realized it yet. The day Emma Monroe returned to Clearview was like any other in the quaint town. Sunlight filtered softly through the canopy of oaks, children played in the park, and the hum of small-town life carried on without interruption. But for Vanessa Monroe, her sister's arrival was a storm on the horizon. It wasn't that Vanessa didn't love Emma, she did. Beneath the tension of their relationship was an unshakable bond forged in childhood. But experience had taught Vanessa to tread carefully. Emma's presence was rarely without consequence. Emma's old blue sedan pulled up to the curved driveway of Vanessa's immaculate home, its engine sputtering in a way that betrayed years of neglect. Vanessa stepped out to greet her, her smile warm but tinged with the faint hesitation of someone bracing for an emotional onslaught. Emma emerged from the car, dressed in a loose cardigan and worn jeans, her hair tied haphazardly into a messy bun. Her eyes darted around the manicured garden, taking in the carefully curated perfection of Vanessa's life. "Welcome back," Vanessa said, pulling her sister into a hug. Emma returned the embrace, her grip tighter than expected. "Thanks for letting me crash here." "Just, thanks." Vanessa nodded, sensing the vulnerability in Emma's voice. "You'll have everything you need in the guest house. It's quiet, private, and perfect for a fresh start." Aaron Hunter appeared at the doorway, his tall frame backlit by the afternoon sun. He gave a polite wave before descending the porch steps to grab Emma's suitcase. His expression was neutral, but his movements were efficient, as though he were eager to finish the task and return to his routine. Emma's gaze lingered on him briefly before she flashed a grateful smile. "Thanks, Aaron," she said, her voice dripping with sincerity. "You're a lifesaver." "It's nothing," Aaron replied, his tone formal but kind. The guest house was cozy, its wooden beams and soft lighting offering a sense of serenity Emma hadn't felt in years. Yet, as she unpacked, she couldn't shake the gnawing sense of inadequacy that always followed her into Vanessa's orbit. Every corner of her sister's home was a reminder of how far she'd fallen behind: a life meticulously organized, a marriage stable and successful, a reputation unblemished. For Emma, it was a glaring reflection of everything she lacked. Dinner that evening was a simple affair, with Vanessa preparing roasted chicken and vegetables while Aaron poured wine. The conversation flowed easily at first, with Emma regaling them with stories of her travels and misadventures. Vanessa laughed, genuinely happy to see her sister's spirits lifting. But Emma's sharp wit and charismatic energy began to shift the dynamic. Aaron, who rarely spoke much beyond polite pleasantries during meals, started engaging more. He asked Emma questions, chuckling at her anecdotes, his eyes lighting up in a way Vanessa hadn't seen in months. Vanessa, busy clearing dishes, didn't notice how Emma's hand lightly brushed Aaron's arm as she passed him the wine bottle. Nor did she catch the fleeting smile they exchanged when their fingers briefly touched. But Emma noticed. She noticed the slight flush on Aaron's cheeks, the way his laugh lingered a moment too long. And she felt something stir, a mixture of curiosity and triumph. In the days that followed, Emma began inserting herself subtly into their routines. She would casually join Aaron on the porch in the mornings as he drank his coffee, her robe loosely tied, framing her figure. She'd find excuses to stay in the kitchen while Aaron cooked, offering unsolicited but charming advice. Vanessa, occupied with work and errands, was often absent during these moments, trusting that her sister and husband could coexist peacefully. At first, Aaron dismissed these interactions as harmless. Emma was Vanessa's sister, after all. But Emma had a way of making him feel seen in ways that Vanessa hadn't lately. She laughed at his jokes, complimented his culinary skills, and asked about his work with an enthusiasm that felt genuine. It was intoxicating. For Emma, it was a game. Testing boundaries, seeing how far she could push without tipping the balance. Aaron was a challenge, and the thrill of capturing his attention was almost too delicious to resist. One evening, as Vanessa worked late, Emma and Aaron found themselves alone in the garden. A bottle of wine sat between them, condensation glistening in the dim light of the outdoor lanterns. The conversation flowed, easy and uninhibited, as the alcohol loosened their tongues. Emma leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "You work too hard, Aaron. You deserve someone who appreciates how much you give." Aaron blinked, the weight of her words hanging in the air. He opened his mouth to respond but stopped himself. The moment was fleeting, but it left a mark, one that neither of them would acknowledge aloud, but both felt deeply. Emma smiled, triumphant. The game had begun. The subtle shift in Clearview's golden couple wasn't immediate. It crept in like an unnoticed crack in a windowpane, spreading quietly until the damage was undeniable. Aaron Hunter, once steadfast in his devotion to Vanessa, found himself drifting into the orbit of her younger sister, Emma. What began as innocent camaraderie slowly transformed into something neither of them could fully control. Emma was patient, her movements calculated but cloaked in the guise of spontaneity. She'd linger in Aaron's presence just long enough to plant a seed of intrigue, then pull away before it could bloom into suspicion. Her every gesture, from a casual brush of her hand against his to the way she tilted her head when he spoke, was carefully curated to keep him on edge. It wasn't overt seduction, it was something far more insidious, a dance of proximity and restraint. For Aaron, the attraction was unexpected and unnerving. Emma's energy was magnetic, a stark contrast to the steady predictability of his marriage. She was bold, unfiltered, and unapologetically herself. She made him laugh in a way he hadn't in years, her sharp wit and boundless enthusiasm reigniting a spark he hadn't realized was missing. Vanessa, meanwhile, remained blissfully unaware. Her trust in Aaron was absolute, and her focus on maintaining their seemingly perfect life left her blind to the subtle dynamics unfolding under her own roof. She spent her days juggling work deadlines and social commitments, proud of the balance she'd struck between her professional and personal lives. To her, Aaron's occasional moodiness was nothing more than work stress, and Emma's liveliness was a welcome relief from the monotony. The first true boundary was crossed on a crisp spring evening. Vanessa was attending a networking event in the city, leaving Aaron and Emma alone in the sprawling Monroe home. They'd eaten dinner together, a casual meal of takeout sushi, and retreated to the living room, where a bottle of wine sat half-empty on the coffee table. Emma, draped across the couch in an oversized sweater that slipped off one shoulder, looked every bit the picture of relaxed confidence. "You don't have to keep me company, you know," she said, her voice light but edged with something deeper. "I'm sure you've got better things to do." Aaron shook his head, smiling. "No better company tonight." Emma laughed softly, the sound low and melodic. She reached for the wine, refilling both their glasses. "You're too kind. No wonder Vanessa speaks so highly of you." The mention of Vanessa should have been a tether, pulling Aaron back to solid ground. But instead, it only deepened his confusion. He took a sip of his wine, the silence between them heavy but not uncomfortable. Emma leaned forward, her elbows resting on her knees as she studied him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. "You know," she began, her tone casual but probing, "you don't seem happy lately. Is everything okay?" Aaron hesitated, caught off guard by the question. "I'm fine," he said after a moment, though the words felt hollow even to him. Emma tilted her head, her expression softening. "You don't have to pretend with me. Sometimes, it helps to talk to someone who's not in the middle of it all." Her gaze held his, unwavering and filled with what felt like genuine concern. For a moment, Aaron considered opening up, voicing the frustrations and loneliness that had been gnawing at him for months. But the thought of sharing those vulnerabilities, especially with Emma, felt like stepping onto unstable ground. He forced a smile. "Thanks, but I'm fine." "Really?" Emma didn't press further, but the seed had been planted. Aaron's mind churned long after she excused herself for the night, the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air. He told himself it was nothing, that he was reading too much into harmless interactions. But deep down, he knew something had shifted. For Emma, it was a small but significant victory. She had seen the flicker of doubt in Aaron's eyes, the way he hesitated before answering. It was a crack in his armor, and she intended to widen it. Over the next few weeks, the tension between them grew, an unspoken current that neither could fully acknowledge. Emma began seeking him out more frequently, joining him for morning coffee, offering to help with errands, suggesting movies to watch when Vanessa worked late. Each interaction was laced with a subtle intimacy, a shared understanding that teetered on the edge of propriety. For Aaron, the pull toward Emma became harder to resist. She was a breath of fresh air in a life that had grown stiflingly predictable. Her laughter was infectious, her presence invigorating. She made him feel alive in a way he hadn't in years. But with every stolen glance and lingering moment, the weight of guilt pressed heavier on his chest. Clearview's perfect facade was beginning to splinter, and Aaron and Emma were both complicit in the fracture. But for Emma, this was only the beginning. The game was far from over, and she intended to play it to its bitter end. The veneer of perfection in the Monroe household was starting to fray, but Vanessa was still blind to the growing storm. To her, Emma's charm and Aaron's warmth toward her sister were signs of harmony. She even found solace in the fact that Aaron and Emma seemed to get along so well. It gave her a sense of relief, as if Emma might finally find some stability through their support. But beneath the surface, the reality was far more sinister. Aaron, now caught between guilt and desire, was no longer the man Vanessa had fallen in love with. He became distracted, distant, and prone to moments of uncharacteristic irritability. He worked late more often, claiming an influx of surgeries at the hospital. When Vanessa questioned him, he'd flash a tired smile and brush it off, but the tension in his voice betrayed him. Vanessa, ever trusting, attributed his behavior to the pressures of his career. But small details began to gnaw at her, an unfamiliar scent lingering on Aaron's clothes, the way he looked away too quickly when she asked about his day, and the subtle shift in his demeanor when Emma entered the room. The cracks widened one evening when Vanessa stumbled upon a peculiar sight. She'd returned home earlier than expected from a dinner with her colleagues. As she entered the house, the muffled sound of laughter drew her toward the living room. There, she found Aaron and Emma seated close on the couch, their heads tilted toward one another as they shared some private joke. The bottle of wine on the coffee table was nearly empty, and Emma's legs were tucked beneath her as she leaned casually toward Aaron, her expression radiant. "Am I interrupting something?" Vanessa asked, her tone light but edged with something darker. Aaron shot up from the couch, his movements abrupt. "Vanessa. I thought you'd be out later," he said, his voice a little too eager. Emma, ever poised, smiled warmly. "We were just catching up. Aaron was telling me about his residency years, some hilarious stories, really." Vanessa forced a smile, her eyes flicking between them. "Well, it's nice to see you two getting along so well." Her words were genuine, but the scene lingered in her mind long after Emma excused herself for the night. Vanessa couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, an undercurrent she couldn't name but could sense nonetheless. She brushed it aside, blaming her overactive imagination. After all, Emma was her sister, and Aaron was her husband. What harm could there be? But her unease only grew. Over the following weeks, Aaron became increasingly elusive, his affection for Vanessa sporadic and almost performative. He'd shower her with compliments or small gifts, only to retreat into himself hours later. The shifts in his behavior were subtle but unmistakable, like the ebb and flow of a tide pulling away from shore. Vanessa confided in her best friend, Lila Carter, during a coffee date one crisp morning. Seated at a corner table in their favorite cafe, Vanessa laid her concerns bare. "I don't know, Lila," she admitted, stirring her latte absent-mindedly. "It's probably nothing, but Aaron's been acting different. And Emma, she's been so close to him lately. It's like they have this bond one don't understand." Lila leaned forward, her brow furrowing. "Have you talked to him about it?" "Not directly," Vanessa said, sighing. "I don't want to come across as paranoid. But sometimes I feel like I'm not seeing the full picture." Lila hesitated before responding. "You know I adore Aaron, but if you feel something's off, trust your instincts. People don't change their behavior for no reason." Vanessa nodded, though a knot tightened in her stomach. She hated the idea of doubting Aaron. Their relationship had always been built on trust, and questioning him felt like crossing a line she wasn't ready to breach. But the tipping point came on a rainy Saturday evening. Vanessa was folding laundry in the bedroom when she noticed Aaron's phone buzzing on the nightstand. Glancing at the screen, she saw Emma's name flash across it, accompanied by a message, "Let me know when you're free. I need to talk about earlier." Her hands froze mid-fold, her pulse quickening. The words seemed innocuous, but paired with the mounting suspicions she'd been trying to ignore, they felt like a crack splitting wide open. Vanessa didn't open the message, she didn't need to. Her mind raced with questions. What had happened earlier? Why was Emma texting Aaron about it? And why hadn't he mentioned anything? When Aaron entered the room moments later, Vanessa forced herself to appear calm. He greeted her with a kiss on the cheek, but the gesture felt hollow. Her smile in return was tight, her heart pounding as she watched him pick up his phone and read the message. His face betrayed nothing, but Vanessa saw the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers lingered on the screen as if debating how to respond. That night, as Aaron slept soundly beside her, Vanessa lay awake, her mind a whirlwind of doubt and dread. Something was wrong. She didn't have proof, not yet, but the sense of betrayal brewing beneath her skin was impossible to ignore. Clearview's perfect couple was no longer unbreakable, and Vanessa was beginning to feel the weight of the fractures pressing down on her heart. The storm arrived late one humid evening in July, both outside and inside the Monroe household. Thunder growled in the distance, the air thick with the promise of rain, as Vanessa paced the living room, her thoughts a tangle of emotions. For weeks, the unease that had taken root in her heart had grown into something impossible to ignore. The message she'd seen on Aaron's phone replayed in her mind like a haunting refrain, "Let me know when you're free. I need to talk about earlier." She had given him time to come clean, time to explain. But Aaron had said nothing, and each passing day only deepened the gulf between them. Tonight, she had decided, would be the end of her silence. Whatever was happening, whatever secrets her husband and sister were keeping, Vanessa needed the truth. Aaron was in his study, scrolling through patient notes, or at least pretending to. Vanessa stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him, her heart hammering in her chest. The storm outside rumbled closer, the faint scent of rain drifting through the open windows. Gathering her resolve, she stepped inside. "Aaron," she said, her voice steady but edged with tension. "We need to talk." He looked up, surprised but not alarmed. "Of course," he said, leaning back in his chair. "What's on your mind?" Vanessa folded her arms, her nails digging into her skin. "Emma." The single word landed between them like a dropped stone, the ripple of its impact visible on Aaron's face. He recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. Vanessa saw the flicker of guilt in his eyes, the slight stiffening of his posture. "What about Emma?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. Vanessa stepped closer, her voice rising slightly. "I'm not blind, Aaron. I've seen the way you look at her. The way she looks at you. And that message on your phone, 'Let me know when you're free.' What was that about?" Aaron's jaw tightened, and for a moment, he said nothing. The silence was deafening, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. Finally, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "She needed advice," he said, his voice calm but strained. "That's all. She's been struggling, and I was just trying to help." Vanessa let out a bitter laugh. "Advice? Is that what you call it? Don't lie to me, Aaron. I deserve better than that." Aaron stood, his own frustration bubbling to the surface. "I'm not lying to you, Vanessa. You're twisting this into something it's not." "Am I?" she shot back, her voice sharp as lightning cracked outside. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been sneaking around with my sister. So tell me, Aaron, am I wrong?" Aaron opened his mouth to respond, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. Vanessa saw the hesitation, the guilt that he couldn't fully mask. Her chest tightened, the weight of betrayal threatening to crush her. She took a step back, her breath shallow. "God," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's true, isn't it?" Before Aaron could answer, a new voice cut through the tension. "What's going on in here?" Vanessa turned to see Emma standing in the doorway, her expression a mixture of defiance and feigned innocence. She was dressed casually, but there was an air of confidence about her that made Vanessa's blood boil. "Why don't you tell me, Emma?" Vanessa said, her voice trembling with anger. "What exactly has been going on between you and my husband?" Emma's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't back down. Nothing that concerns you. The words were a slap to Vanessa's face, and something inside her snapped. How dare you, she hissed, stepping closer to her sister. How dare you come into my home, accept my kindness, and then betray me like this? Emma shrugged, her calm demeanor only stoking the fire of Vanessa's rage. Maybe you should ask yourself why Aaron was so easy to steal. Maybe your perfect life isn't as perfect as you think. Vanessa lunged forward, but Aaron stepped between them, his hands raised. Enough, he shouted, his voice commanding but desperate. This is spiraling out of control. Out of control. Vanessa repeated, her voice dripping with disbelief. It's been out of control for weeks, Aaron. While I've been working and trusting you, you've been, her voice cracked, and she pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting back tears. The storm outside reached its peak, rain lashing against the windows and thunder shaking the walls. Vanessa turned and grabbed her keys from the counter. She couldn't stay. Not now, not with the walls of her life collapsing around her. Where are you going? Aaron called after her, his voice tinged with panic. Anywhere but here, Vanessa said without turning back. I can't look at either of you right now. She slammed the door behind her, the sound echoing through the house. Moments later, the roar of her car engine cut through the storm as she sped away into the night. Aaron and Emma stood in stunned silence, the weight of what had just transpired sinking in. For Vanessa, the road ahead was as dark and treacherous as the storm she drove into, but she didn't care. All she wanted was to escape the betrayal, even if it meant driving straight into the heart of chaos. The rain fell in relentless sheets as Vanessa's car sped down the narrow, winding roads outside of Clearview. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white with tension. The headlights barely pierced through the downpour, the wipers struggling to keep pace. The storm outside mirrored the tempest within her, betrayal, anger, and heartbreak swirling in a maelstrom that left no room for reason. Her mind replayed the confrontation in the living room, each word cutting deeper than the last. Emma's smug indifference, Aaron's weak denials, they were daggers to her heart, each one twisting the knife of betrayal. The perfect life she had built, the trust she had cherished, had all crumbled in a single evening. The betrayal wasn't just infidelity, it was a dismantling of everything she believed in, orchestrated by the two people she loved most. She slammed her foot on the gas, the car surging forward, its engine roaring against the storm. Her breath came in short, uneven gasps, tears streaming down her face and mingling with the sweat on her brow. The road ahead twisted and turned, but Vanessa barely registered it. Her vision was blurred, not by the rain, but by the overwhelming flood of emotions that threatened to drown her. You'll never be enough, Emma's voice echoed in her mind, cutting through the thunder outside. Vanessa gritted her teeth, gripping the wheel tighter. How could her sister, the person she had sheltered, supported, and loved, destroy her life so casually? How could Aaron, the man she trusted with her soul, betray her so completely? The car hit a deep puddle, jolting violently as the tires skidded on the slick asphalt. Vanessa yanked the wheel instinctively, her heart pounding as the vehicle swerved dangerously close to the edge of the road. For a moment, she thought she had regained control, but the wheels spun helplessly on the wet surface. The sharp bend ahead came too quickly. Vanessa's reflexes were dulled by exhaustion and despair. She turned the wheel, but the car fishtailed, sliding out of her control. The guardrail loomed ahead, rusted and fragile, a weak barrier against the steep drop beyond. Her scream was drowned out by the deafening roar of the storm as the car smashed through the barrier. Time slowed as the car tumbled down the embankment, the world outside a chaotic blur of rain, rocks, and twisted metal. Vanessa's body was thrown violently against the seatbelt, her head snapping forward as the airbags deployed with a force that knocked the breath from her lungs. The sound of shattering glass and crunching metal filled her ears, a violent symphony of destruction. When the car finally came to rest at the bottom of the ravine, silence fell, a stark contrast to the chaos moments before. The rain continued to pour, drumming softly against the crumpled hood of the vehicle. Steam hissed from the shattered engine, mingling with the rain to create a ghostly mist that enveloped the wreck. Inside the car, Vanessa was motionless. Her head rested against the deflated airbag, blood trickling from a cut on her temple. The dashboard lights flickered weakly before going dark, plunging the ravine into shadow. Underscore 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 underscore. Morning broke with a pale, gray light that filtered through the dissipating storm clouds. The first responders arrived at the scene, their flashlights cutting through the gloom as they descended the steep embankment. The wreckage of Vanessa's car was a mangled mess, its frame twisted and broken beyond recognition. Detective Selena Brooks stood at the edge of the ravine, her sharp eyes taking in the scene. She had been called in as soon as the crash was reported, a high-profile case involving one of Clearview's most prominent families. Selena's reputation for meticulousness preceded her, and she wasted no time analyzing the details. The rain had washed away much of the evidence, but something about the scene felt off. The tire marks on the road above told a story of panic and desperation, but Selena couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than a simple accident. "Any survivors?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. A paramedic emerged from the wreckage, shaking his head solemnly. "She didn't make it." Selena's jaw tightened as she turned her attention back to the scene. "Secure the area," she ordered. "I want every detail documented. This isn't just an accident. There's a story here, and I'm going to find it." As the rain tapered off, the truth about Vanessa's final moments remained shrouded in mystery. Selena's investigation was just beginning, and the threads of betrayal, heartbreak, and desperation would soon unravel, exposing the darkness that had consumed the Monroe family. Above the ravine, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a cold light on the broken guardrail and the shattered lives left in the wake of Vanessa's tragic demise. The news of Vanessa Monroe's death spread through Clearview like wildfire, leaving the tight-knit community in shock. To those who had idolized her as the epitome of grace and success, the idea of her life ending so tragically, and so violently, was unthinkable. Yet beneath the whispers of grief and sympathy were murmurs of suspicion. Vanessa's death felt too sudden, too dramatic, for a woman who had seemingly everything. At the center of the storm stood Aaron Hunter and Emma Monroe. Both were cast into the harsh glare of scrutiny as details of their betrayal began to surface. The whispers grew louder, neighbors spoke of the tension in the Monroe household, of how Emma had arrived unannounced and how Aaron had grown distant. Speculation turned to accusations, and the idyllic facade the two had clung to began to crumble. Detective Selena Brooks wasted no time delving into the case. With her signature focus and intuition, she combed through every detail, from the crash site to Vanessa's personal life. Selena had seen too many accidents that weren't accidents at all, and something about Vanessa's death didn't sit right with her. She started with the crash itself. The tire marks leading to the broken guardrail told a story of panic, of a vehicle swerving out of control. But Selena's trained eye caught inconsistencies. The skid marks were erratic, but there was no indication of braking until the very last moment. Why wouldn't Vanessa have tried to stop earlier? Had she been distracted? Or was there something, or someone, else involved? Next, Selena turned her attention to Vanessa's relationships. Interviews with friends and colleagues painted a picture of a woman under immense pressure in the days leading up to her death. Claire Thompson, Vanessa's closest confidant, spoke candidly about their last conversation. She was troubled, Claire admitted, her voice heavy with emotion. She suspected Aaron was involved with someone else. She didn't want to believe it, but the signs were there. She mentioned Emma, but I told her it was ridiculous. I mean, her own sister. Selena took note, her sharp mind piecing together the timeline. The betrayal Vanessa had uncovered seemed to have been the catalyst for the events of that fateful night. But betrayal alone didn't explain why Vanessa had driven so recklessly into the storm. Her interviews with Aaron and Emma only deepened her suspicions. Aaron, pale and visibly shaken, stuck to his story. He claimed he and Vanessa had argued the night of the accident but insisted he had no idea she would leave in such a state. "I told her I was sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I begged her to stay and talk, but she just grabbed her keys and left. I never thought it would end like this." Emma, on the other hand, was harder to pin down. She arrived at her interview dressed impeccably, her demeanor calm and composed. But Selina detected a calculated edge to her words, a deliberate effort to control the narrative. "I loved my sister," Emma said, her voice steady but lacking warmth. "Yes, we had our differences, but I would never wish harm on her. This was a tragic accident, nothing more." Selina noted the subtle shift in Emma's tone whenever Vanessa's name was mentioned. There was no sorrow, no remorse, only a detached acknowledgement of the facts. It wasn't enough to prove anything, but it was enough to keep Selina digging. As the days passed, the investigation uncovered more unsettling details. Financial records revealed that Vanessa had recently withdrawn a large sum of money, though its purpose remained unclear. Text messages from Vanessa's phone hinted at plans to confront Aaron and Emma, but the last messages sent were fragmented and cryptic, as though written in haste. The autopsy report added another layer of intrigue. While the cause of death was consistent with injuries sustained in the crash, there were subtle inconsistencies: a bruise on Vanessa's wrist, an elevated level of alcohol in her bloodstream that friends swore was uncharacteristic of her. Selina began to wonder, had Vanessa truly driven herself to the brink, or had someone pushed her? The town's grief began to curdle into anger as more rumors circulated. Aaron faced the brunt of it, his colleagues whispering behind his back, patients canceling appointments. Emma, once admired for her beauty and charm, became a pariah, the target of glares and muttered accusations wherever she went. Selina, undeterred by the noise, pressed forward. She pored over security footage, analyzed phone records, and re-interviewed anyone who might have known even the smallest detail. Each piece of evidence was another thread in the tangled web of lies and deceit that surrounded Vanessa's death. The deeper Selina dug, the clearer it became that this was no mere accident. The betrayal, the desperation, the storm, all of it pointed to something far more sinister. But proving it would take more than suspicion. Selina needed the missing piece, the one detail that would unravel the entire facade. And as she stared at the case file spread across her desk late one night, she felt a chilling certainty: the truth about Vanessa Monroe's death wasn't just buried in the wreckage of her car, it was hidden in the hearts of those she trusted most. Detective Selina Brooks sat at her desk, surrounded by a sea of files, photographs, and hastily scribbled notes. The more she uncovered about Vanessa Monroe's life, the more she realized the tangled mess of betrayal, resentment, and desperation that had led to her untimely death. Yet, the final piece of the puzzle still eluded her. Was Vanessa's death truly a tragic accident fueled by emotional turmoil, or had someone played a more direct hand in her demise? Her instincts told her it was the latter. Selina had seen too many cases where emotions ran high, where people acted on impulses they would later claim were unthinkable. The cracks in the Monroe family were undeniable, but now she needed proof. She started with the timeline. Witness accounts and phone records placed Vanessa at home until late in the evening on the night of her death. She'd had a heated confrontation with Aaron and Emma, a confrontation that had escalated into Vanessa storming out. But one detail stuck out. A neighbor had come forward, mentioning they'd seen a figure leaving the guest house shortly after Vanessa drove away. The figure had slipped into a car and followed her. The neighbor couldn't be sure who it was, the storm had obscured their view, but it was enough to pique Selina's interest. She pulled up Emma's phone records. Emma had made no calls that night, but there was a curious gap in her activity: no texts, no app usage, for over an hour, beginning just after Vanessa left. Selina dug deeper, cross-referencing traffic camera footage from roads near the Monroe home. What she found sent a chill down her spine. Emma's car had been spotted following Vanessa's, its headlights visible a few minutes behind. Selina called Emma back in for questioning. This time, the carefully composed mask Emma had worn began to crack under Selina's relentless probing. "I was at home," Emma insisted, her voice tight but controlled. "I didn't leave the guesthouse after Vanessa left." Selina leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "Then how do you explain your car being seen on the same road Vanessa took, minutes after she left the house?" Emma froze, her lips parting slightly before she quickly recovered. I went for a drive to clear my head. I had no idea Vanessa went the same way." Selina didn't buy it. "You expect me to believe that, on the night of your sister's death, you just happened to take a drive in the middle of a storm, on the exact same road she was driving on?" Emma's eyes darted away, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. Selina pressed on. "Emma, this is your chance to tell me the truth. If there's something you're hiding, now's the time to come clean." Emma's gaze snapped back to Selina, her expression hardening. "I don't have to listen to this. I'm done answering your questions." She stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. But Selina wasn't finished. "Walking out won't change what I've found. You were there, Emma. The question is why?" Emma paused, her jaw tightening, but she said nothing as she left the room. Selina watched her go, frustration simmering beneath her calm exterior. Emma's refusal to cooperate only solidified Selina's belief that she was hiding something. The breakthrough came 2 days later, in the form of Vanessa's recovered voicemail messages. One, sent to Erin mere minutes before the crash, was heart-wrenching. Her voice, trembling but defiant, said, "You and Emma deserve each other. But you'll never take what's mine. Never." Another, left for Emma, was even more chilling. "I know you're following me. Stay away, Emma. I mean it." The messages painted a grim picture of Vanessa's final moments. She'd known Emma was behind her, chasing her through the storm. Selina's mind raced with possibilities. Had Emma confronted Vanessa on the road? Had there been an altercation that caused the crash? Selina reviewed the crash site photos again, her sharp eyes scanning for anything she might have missed. Then she saw it, faint scratches on the rear bumper of Vanessa's car, marks that hadn't been explained in the initial report. Could Emma's car have made contact, even unintentionally, forcing Vanessa off the road? The lab results confirmed Selina's suspicions. Paint from Emma's car matched traces found on Vanessa's bumper. The evidence was circumstantial but damning. Selina now had the thread she needed to weave a case. She confronted Emma once more, armed with the new evidence. Emma's composure crumbled as Selina laid out the timeline, the messages, the paint samples. Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but her voice remained defiant. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she finally admitted. "I just wanted to talk to her, to explain." But she wouldn't stop. She kept speeding up, and I lost control for a moment. "I never wanted this." Selina's face remained impassive as she recorded Emma's statement. It wasn't the cold, calculated confession she had feared, but it was enough. Emma's actions, reckless and fueled by jealousy, had set the stage for Vanessa's tragic end. As Selina closed her notebook, she looked at Emma, now slumped in her chair, her face a mask of anguish. "You wanted her life," Selina said quietly. "And now, you've destroyed it." The case was far from over. Legal proceedings would follow, and the town of Clearview would continue to reel from the revelations. But for Selina, the truth had been uncovered, and Vanessa's story had been told. Still, as she left the interrogation room, a sense of unease lingered. The damage wrought by betrayal and jealousy was done, but its echoes would haunt the Monroe family, and Clearview, for years to come. The courtroom was packed. Whispers rippled through the crowd like a restless tide as Emma Monroe took her seat at the defense table. Her once glamorous aura had dulled, dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usual air of confidence had been replaced by a stoic mask. Aaron Hunter sat a few rows behind her, his face pale and drawn. He avoided her gaze, as though even acknowledging her would deepen his own guilt. Detective Selina Brooks observed from the back, her sharp eyes fixed on the proceedings. This was no longer her investigation, her job was done. But she had stayed to witness the fallout, to see justice carried out for Vanessa. Though Selina was pragmatic, she couldn't deny the weight of this case, the way it had seeped into her thoughts and lingered like a shadow. The prosecution wasted no time painting Emma as the antagonist in Vanessa's tragic demise. They described her actions that stormy night, the pursuit, the reckless driving, the pressure that had driven Vanessa to her breaking point. Emma's defense team countered with arguments of intent, insisting that Vanessa's death was an accident, not a premeditated act. But the evidence, the paint samples, the voicemail recordings, Emma's own admission, was damning. Aaron was called to the stand, his testimony a pivotal moment. He looked older, worn, as though the weight of his actions had drained the life from him. His voice trembled as he recounted the events leading up to Vanessa's death. "I never meant for things to go this far," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought I was helping Emma, but I betrayed the woman I loved. I betrayed Vanessa. And for that, I'll never forgive myself." The courtroom was silent as Aaron's words hung in the air. Emma's eyes flickered with something, guilt, perhaps, or anger, but she said nothing. The prosecution pressed Aaron further, asking if he believed Emma had deliberately endangered Vanessa. Aaron hesitated, his hands gripping the edge of the witness stand. "I don't know," he admitted. "I don't think she meant to hurt Vanessa, but she couldn't let go of her anger. None of us could." His statement encapsulated the tragedy of it all. The love, the betrayal, the jealousy, they had become a toxic brew, poisoning everyone involved. When the jury delivered their verdict, it was met with a tense stillness. Emma Monroe was found guilty of reckless endangerment resulting in death. While the sentence was lighter than many in the courtroom had hoped, it was enough to ensure she faced the consequences of her actions. Emma's face remained blank as the judge read the sentence, but as the gavel struck, tears began to roll silently down her cheeks. Underscore 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 underscore. In the weeks that followed, Clearview struggled to regain its equilibrium. The town that had once celebrated the Monroe family now whispered about its downfall. Aaron resigned from his prestigious position at the hospital and left town, his reputation irreparably damaged. Some said he moved to a small coastal city, seeking anonymity. Others claimed he was seeking redemption, though how he would find it remained a mystery. Emma began her prison sentence in silence, her name becoming synonymous with betrayal and destruction. Letters from former friends and acquaintances went unanswered. The vibrant, charming woman Clearview once knew had become a ghost, her legacy stained by jealousy and grief. Vanessa's memory, however, lingered. The community mourned her loss, holding candlelit vigils and sharing stories of her kindness and accomplishments. Yet even in her absence, the scars of her death remained fresh. To many, the tragedy of her life wasn't just her untimely end, it was the betrayal she endured, the fractures in the relationships she had cherished most. Underscore 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 underscore. Selina Brooks moved on to her next case, as detectives always do. But Vanessa Monroe's story stayed with her. It wasn't just the tragedy that haunted Selena, but the questions it raised. How far would jealousy drive a person? How thin was the line between love and obsession? And could anything have been done to stop it? On her last night in Clearview, Selena stood at the edge of the ravine where Vanessa's car had crashed. The guardrail had been replaced, the mangled remains of the accident long since cleared. Yet the air still felt heavy, as though the weight of that night lingered in the earth itself. Selena closed her eyes, imagining Vanessa's final moments, the storm, the fear, the anger. She could almost hear the echo of Vanessa's last voicemail, her voice trembling but fierce, "You'll never take what's mine." "I hope you found peace," Selena murmured, her words lost in the evening breeze. As Selena turned to leave, the sunset bathed the ravine in hues of gold and crimson, a fleeting moment of beauty in a place marked by tragedy. Clearview would heal, in time. But the scars Vanessa's death had left, on the town, on her family, on Selena herself, would remain. And somewhere, in the shadows of memory, Vanessa Monroe's story lived on, a cautionary tale of betrayal, love, and the fragile threads that bind us together. Months passed, and the quiet town of Clearview slowly began to settle into a semblance of normalcy, though the tragedy of Vanessa Monroe's death continued to cast a long shadow. The Monroe estate, once a symbol of elegance and success, now stood empty, its garden overgrown and its windows dark. The silence around it spoke of a wound that refused to heal. Aaron Hunter had disappeared into the background, choosing exile over the whispers that followed him through the streets of Clearview. Some said he had started anew in a distant city, but others believed he carried his guilt like an anchor, unable to forgive himself for his role in the chain of events that led to Vanessa's death. Occasionally, someone would claim to have seen him at a small, coastal clinic, tending to patients with a quiet determination, as though trying to atone for his sins. Emma Monroe, once the dazzling, carefree sister, now sat behind prison walls. Her days were filled with silence, her vibrant personality dulled to a shadow of what it once was. The betrayal she had inflicted upon her sister, her own flesh and blood, haunted her like a relentless ghost. At night, she dreamed of Vanessa, of her laughter, of the bond they had once shared, and of the fiery anger in her eyes during their final confrontation. The dreams would always end the same way, Vanessa walking away, leaving Emma to the darkness. Clearview, too, bore the scars of the tragedy. The town had always prided itself on its sense of community, but Vanessa's death revealed cracks in that facade. People spoke in hushed tones about betrayal and jealousy, the perfect family that had fallen apart under the weight of its secrets. The story of the Monroe sisters became a cautionary tale, shared in whispers among neighbors and used as a reminder that even the closest bonds could shatter under the strain of envy and deceit. Detective Selena Brooks returned to her life in the city, her role in the Monroe case officially closed. Yet, it lingered in her mind like an unresolved question. As a detective, Selena had seen her share of heartbreak and violence, but this case had been different. It wasn't just about evidence or confessions, it was about the fragility of human connections, the way love and trust could twist into something unrecognizable. One evening, months after the trial, Selena received an unmarked envelope. Inside was a single letter, written in a hand she recognized immediately. It was from Emma. Underscore 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 underscore. Dear Detective Brooks, I've had a lot of time to think. About Vanessa. About what I did. About what I lost. You asked me why I followed her that night. Why I couldn't let her go. The truth is, I don't know. Maybe I wanted to explain myself. Maybe I wanted her to forgive me. Maybe I just couldn't stand the thought of her leaving me behind. But I know this, I never meant to hurt her. I wanted her life, yes. I wanted what she had. But I didn't want her gone. Now that she is, I see the truth. Vanessa wasn't perfect. Her life wasn't perfect. But she loved me. Even after everything, she still cared. And I threw it all away. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know the truth. Vanessa deserved better, from me, from Aaron, from everyone who claimed to love her. I'll carry this guilt with me for the rest of my life. It's the only thing I have left of her. Sincerely. Emma. Underscore 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 underscore. Selena read the letter twice, then folded it neatly and placed it back in the envelope. It didn't change what had happened. It didn't bring Vanessa back or undo the pain her death had caused. But it was a glimpse into the heart of a woman who had lost herself in jealousy and regret. Selena stared out of her apartment window, the city lights stretching endlessly before her. Vanessa's story was over, but its echoes remained, a reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked envy, of fractured trust, and of the fragile bonds that hold people together. Somewhere in Clearview, the garden Vanessa had so carefully tended began to bloom again, a bittersweet symbol of life continuing even in the shadow of loss. The Monroe name faded into the background, a cautionary tale etched into the town's memory but rarely spoken aloud. For Selena, the case of Vanessa Monroe became one of many she would carry with her. It wasn't the worst she'd seen, but it was the one that left a mark, a reminder that the greatest tragedies often stem not from violence, but from the pain we inflict on the people we love. As she closed her eyes that night, Selena thought of Vanessa. Of her strength, her dignity, and the way she had fought to hold her world together until it shattered around her. In the end, Vanessa's story wasn't just about betrayal, it was about love. Love twisted, love lost, and the enduring hope that even in the darkest moments, some part of that love would remain. What would you do if someone you trusted most betrayed you in such a devastating way? Do you think jealousy and envy can ever truly justify someone's actions, or are they just excuses for deeper flaws? And finally, do you believe Emma's remorse is genuine, or is it too little, too late?